Hello strategists and welcome to the strategy table. For today's video we will be covering the Barbarian, the class that has so much passion about poning one's enemies that they can sunder the very mountains. In Pathfinder 2e we see that their key ability is strength, go figure, and their hit points are 12 plus their con modifier. They are always going to do their damnedest to lead the hit point race. Nothing has changed there. But if we look, initial proficiencies, they are expert in perception, expert in fortitude, expert in will, and trained in reflex. Which means, like most of the classes, they have 2 experts and 1 trained. So their weak saving throw is in fact reflex and will always tend to be so as they level up. Their skills are athletics and a number of additional skills equal to 3 plus their int modifier. If you're doing a Barbarian, generally, though not required, int tends to be one of the dumpier stats, so don't look for a ton of skills when it comes to being a Barbarian. Though, if you double up on athletics, you can at least choose a different one. They are trained in simple, martial, and unarmed attacks. I would point out that, and this is going to become slightly more important later, there is technically a very small area for melee weapons that is advanced. It tends to include like a gnomish weapon, an orcish weapon, so on and so forth. It's not a very big list, but future rules could expand upon that list. Barbarians are not trained in this more advanced, slightly higher than martial weapon. However, there are abilities coming up which would apply to higher than martial weapons. Their defenses, they are trained in light and medium armor and unarmored defense, which is good since most of their abilities only work in unarmed light or medium armor. And of course, like everyone else, they're trained in their own class DC. If we go on, we see that they get the core ability Rage. Rage. Tapping into your passion to defeat your enemies. Though Rage in Pathfinder 2e works slightly differently than it does before. Namely, you're not going to automatically die when you go unconscious. It takes an action to activate, and the requirements are that you are not fatigued or raging. Though, and we're going to skip to the end of this, you can't do it for 1 minute after you've previously raged. They don't have a key term for that, though there is a third requirement that you have not raged within the past minute, regardless of fatigue or raging. What it does in Pathfinder 2e is you gain a number of temporary hit points. Temporary hit points, not a change to your con mod, so when you go unconscious, you lose your hit points, equal to your level plus your con modifier. At low levels, this throws a lot of power onto your con score. At higher levels, it throws more power onto your level. And at the top levels, it barely does a damn thing. Whoops. Basically, assuming an initial con modifier of 4 at level 1, you'll get 5 temporary hit points. And if you never increase that score, at level 20, you'll get 24 hit points. But considering at every level you're already gaining 12 plus your con modifier, once you've gotten past level 12, hell, even before then, you're not adding much. It's basically just 2 to your con score. It's the flattest 2 to your con score plus your con score. So there's some math there, but at some level, this particular bout of raging doesn't do much. Of course, hopefully there are ways to make it stronger, but just be aware of the fact that this by itself is a bit off. But at the core ability of Rage, you also deal 2 additional damage with melee weapons and unarmed attacks. Again, melee weapons. Not necessarily ones you're trained with. Any melee weapons you do 2 additional damage with, though the damage is halved if your weapon or unarmed attack is agile. You take a -1 penalty to AC, and you cannot use actions with the concentrate trait unless they also have the rage trait, though you can seek while raging. After you stop raging, you lose any remaining temporary hit points, and you cannot rage again for 1 minute. Here's the issue, though. The frenzy lasts for 1 minute, until there are no enemies you can perceive, or until you fall unconscious, whichever comes in first. So, if you are a DM or a player countering it, your big enemy, oddly enough, is rogues or invisibility. Basically, the idea being that you make it so that they can no longer perceive you. It doesn't say until you know there are no enemies around. It says until there are no enemies you can perceive. So a hide skill can negate a rage. Can't perceive me. It turns off as a state-based effect. I'm not saying you have to stick with that rule, though I am pointing out read as written. That's how it works. So you may want to work out with your players or your DM if you really believe rage should work slightly differently. Instinct is the Barbarians version of subclasses. That's what it is. You just choose what type of instincts you pull off. And because of that, we'll discuss that a bit later. Skill feats, Barbarian feats, we'll discuss those. Deny advantage. It's not evasion. It's combat. Not reflexes. Fuck. What's the term now? I'm forgetting the one. You can't be flanked, basically. I don't know why the term's not coming to me right now. But you are not flat-footed to hidden, undetected, or flanking creatures of your level or lower. However, they can still help their allies flank. Which means if you're level 3, you can't be flanked by someone who's level 3. However, that person who cannot himself be flanking you can count as flanking to get to level 4 on the other side of you the ability to flank you, if that makes sense. The person that you are their level of does not get the benefits of flanking. You are not flat-footed to him, but that person does still count as being the flanking opposition so that someone who is higher level than you can gain the benefits of flanking. You don't get to negate one person and remove the entire flanking status. Skill increases, we've discussed those. That's just core things that every class gets. Ancestry, brutality. Your fury makes your weapons lethal. Your proficiency ranks for simple weapons, martial weapons, and unarmed attacks increases to expert. While raging, you gain access to the critical specialization effects for melee weapons and unarmed attacks. Couple things here. One, unlike a couple of other classes that gave you weapon specialization, you get this when you're only expert, not martial. So you do get weapon specialization effects, though with only the expert tier of bonuses added to your attack rolls. So just to be aware that your attack will be slightly lower. They're mitigating this to make the numbers be even by the fact that you can only do these type of benefits when you're raging, which gives you the 2 extra damage. So really it's just that your attack is lower, which is kind of a weird thing for it to end up being the same, kind of. When you're raging, you have an attack bonus equivalent to being master, and thus you gain the critical weapon specialization effects for those things. Except for those advanced weapons, or the non-martial or simple weapons. Because this says for melee weapons, not for ones you're trained with, and not for simple or unarmed, you could grab something that you are not proficient with, gain a +2 to attack with it, which would bring you up to not even trained, because trained is what gives you your level bonus as well, but a +2 bonus and that weapon's critical specialization effects. I don't know if there's any way to make use of that right now, but if there is in fact a weapon that you are not proficient in, but for some reason has a really good critical specialization effect that you want, that is not tied into other weapons, though critical specialization effects tend to be more types of weapons and not a specific weapon. I'm just saying that there is not a loophole, but a slight gap, we'll say, a bridging of rules, where you gain a critical specialization effect for a weapon you may not be proficient with. Juggernaut, your proficiency rank for fortitude increases the master, and thus you gain the old version of evasion for your fortitude saves. Weapon specialization, you deal an additional 2 damage with weapons and armed attacks in which you have expert proficiency, 3 if you have master proficiency, and 4 if you're legendary, as well as your instinct specialization ability applies now. It does not discuss it right here, but as you get up, of course, you will get better with weapons. So unlike alchemists, you will be doing slightly more damage as you level up. Lightning reflexes simply increases your reflex saving throws up to expert, but not yet master, so you do not get evasion with it. Raging resistance. When raging, you gain resistance equal to 3 plus your con mod to damage type based on your instinct. This is the con mod, not your level, which means at low levels, this is really good because your con mod, you know, being so high, even though this is 9th level, this basically means you should have a 7 or 8 in resistance, not counting for magic items. More than likely just a 7. So that's actually kind of good. It doesn't appear to be negated by things. It just says when resistance you gain equal to a damage type based upon your instinct. So this can mean different instincts are stronger or weaker in terms of resistance because of that. At 11th level, you get Mighty Rage, which gives you the Mighty Rage free action, which says as a free action while raging, while triggering a rage, you can use an action that has the rage trait. Alternatively, you can increase the actions of triggering your rage to 2 to instead use a 2-action activity with the rage trait. Basically, in addition to raging, you can now do an action that you can only do while raging. This lets you double up on your action. As well as if you have an action that normally would take 2 actions, you can do that while raging for the cost of increasing it to 2 actions. Between the two of them, what this means is you save an action for 1 turn on action economy. Not a ton to be saving, but if you're constantly raging over the course of, a meeting, you might be able to use this a few times, and those extra actions you get out of it could be clutch. Greater Juggernaut, you have Stalwart Physiology. Your proficiency rank for Fortitude increases to Legendary, granting you improved evasion for Fortitude. When you roll a critical failure, it's only a failure. When you fail a fort save, you still have the damage you take. At 13th level, your expertise in armors increases to Expert. At 13th level, your proficiency ranks for your weapons increases to Master, which ties back into weapon specialization, which means at 13th level, you do 3 extra damage as opposed to just 2 extra damage. 15th level, you finally get greater weapon specialization, which says 4 with weapons and unarmed attacks in which you're expert. But you're not expert in those anymore, are you? You're in fact master, which means you're doing 6 extra damage. If you have some way to get a weapon up to legendary, you'd be doing 8 extra damage and you gain greater weapon benefits. All of this so far is just normal progression. Nothing's really out of the ordinary until we look at the instincts of Barbarian. 15th level Indomitable Will, your will save increases, so you get evasion on that. Heightened Senses, your perception increases to Master. Quick Rage, at 17th level, you only need to wait 1 turn after raging to rage again. This is a really high level to do this benefit for what I would consider a major nerf to how Barbarians used to work in Pathfinder 1st edition. They're trying to close a loophole that existed, except it's not so much a loophole as like the most public secret ever, which was rage cycling. In Pathfinder, they had Barbarians and they had Blood Ragers who could only do actions and certain abilities a certain amount of times per rage. So the ability to end your rage and re-rage immediately was a key to using these abilities, which was really kind of this ability to rage cycle was kind of one of the primary reasons by the end of Pathfinder's run to choose Barbarian. Because if you couldn't rage cycle, a lot of their abilities did not match end of Pathfinder run abilities. They just didn't. So they tried to close this loophole by adding this flat 1-minute timer. No matter what, you have to wait a minute. And then at 17th level, they grant you the ability to, okay, now you only have to wait 1 round in order to do the equivalent of rage cycling, if that's even required. Which, like I said, I feel is kind of weird because at the beginning of this product run, like right now, this might be perfect. And at the beginning of Pathfinder, the ability to rage cycle would have been considered slightly more powerful. But by the end of Pathfinder's books, by the end of their run, it was required. So by the end of Pathfinder 2e, the more books they release for everyone, the more this limitation's going to actually make Barbarians be a suboptimal choice. Now, again, sometimes I get people who comment about, well, this is good for role-playing and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that people shouldn't play it. I'm saying, though, that if you want to have good Barbarian stories about that super clutch, awesome moment, you're going to want to play Barbarians now. The more books they release, the more, like every other class, I'm willing to bet is going to become more powerful in comparison to Barbarian because of this flat limitation. This is like the opposite of a poorly worded rule that makes something be oh, well, you can read into that and maybe get a little more power out of it than the developer intended. I feel like they've unintentionally nerfed Barbarians more than they intended. Unless something is released later on to change how that rage mechanic works, this is going to become a Barbarian's major weakness in the years to come because of that flat 1 minute restriction for so many levels. So, might want to be playing this class a little bit earlier because later on it's going to be the other classes that are going to start having more and more abilities where they get to pull off stuff to save the day. Unless they introduce some Barbarian abilities to greatly make up for this, is my point, though. If it's tied into raging, you might have a weakness. Armor of Fury. Your proficiency ranks increase for light armor, medium armor, and unarmored increase all the way up to master. Devastator. At 19th level, your proficiency rank for Barbarian DC increases to master, and your melee strikes ignore 10 points of creatures' resistance to their physical damage. All right. I mean, this is 19th level, so you need some like major defining feature, and your major defining feature is you ignore 10 points of damage. Or you ignore 10 points of someone ignoring your damage. Okay. Remember, you're only doing, even if you have a legendary, 8 extra damage. So you're slightly ignoring your own weapon specialization. Like that's not a whole hell of a lot. It really isn't. By 19th level, you have a bunch of other things applying to damage. So I'm not saying it's weak. I'm just saying it's not wowing me over. You know what I'm saying? It's not making me want to wake up on a Monday. It's okay. It's okay. But now we have the instincts. This is where you get to define your barbarian, separate it from other barbarians, and really prove how powerful you can be. You're going to go giant. I'll read through all these, but if you really want to go with classical barbarian, you're going to go with a giant one. We'll get to that when we get to it. Every instinct has a thing that's called an anathema, which is something you cannot do or else you lose the ability to do your instincts for a bit. I believe they discuss it here. Whenever you perform an anathema, you lose the abilities and any instinct feats related to that instinct specifically for 1 day of downtime. Though you do get to keep non-instinct abilities. Every instinct has certain abilities, certain weaknesses, and feats that are tied into those specifically. So some of these instincts will get either weaker or more powerful when we actually get into the barbarian feats. Not just necessarily the core abilities we read here, similar to the 3 different types of alchemist, of course. First one up is animal instinct, which is you gain attacks and damage and traits for your attacks based upon your animal type. Your anathema is using weapons while raging. Basically, you have to be unarmed and or using your animal instinct attack. So that attack better be better than a weapon to make up for it, if that makes sense. Bestial Rage. When you rage gain your chosen animal's unarmed attack or attacks, the specific attack gained and damage it deals and its traits are listed on table 3-3. These attacks are in the Brawling group, and your rage action gains the Morph, Primal, and Transmutation traits. Transmutation being important because transmutation is always a rule that D&D and Pathfinder always keep screwing up and changing as their runs continue on. So rather like how I talked about how the flat 1 minute's going to slowly become a crippling factor to barbarians, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but at some point later, let's say 3 or 4 years from now, when Paizo decides to change what transmutation means, they will inadvertently change what this rage does. Just saying, be aware that there is a trait here that is probably going to get redefined in 2 or 3 years because they're always redefining how transmutations work. As soon as someone figures out how to exploit transmutation, they change its definition. Now, you do get these as unarmed attacks as well as their things. Because it's an unarmed attack, it also gains benefits from your weapon specializations. So whatever this says, plus the normal bonuses, don't forget to add in weapon specialization with it. Unarmed attack doesn't necessarily just mean punching. So we see we have different animals, fist, jaws and claws, horn, jaws and claws, so on and so forth. Doesn't really matter. Really what you're looking at is the damage types and the damage numbers. So if you look at them, nothing really stands out in terms of sheer damage. You don't have a D12, though you do have a couple that have a secondary D4. I'm not sure why you'd be doing that, realistically. If you're grappled, maybe you could do the tongue in this case. Some of these other ones, though, it is lesser damage, but it's a different damage type, and that one I do understand. Some creatures are going to be more resistant to piercing than slashing. So maybe you're willing to take that reduced die to possibly increase the damage. But that being said, the average damage on a D10 is 5.5. The average damage on a D6 is 3.5. So for this to be up, they only need 3 damage resistance to piercing for Claw to, on average, be doing more damage to that creature, which isn't a whole hell of a lot of resistance. Remember, going back to the Barbarian itself, it was 3 plus their con mod as damage type resistance. So even though even a Barbarian, just flat, even a flat Barbarian has enough resistance possibly to a damage type to make you want to switch off and use that other damage. Be aware of that. Key number is 3. I don't really know what type of situation where there'd be a 2 or a 1, but it's there. The traits are also very useful. Grapple, agile, shove. Are you doing a build around grappling? Are you doing a build around things being agile? That's kind of what this comes down to. Would point out, I didn't point out earlier, that when raging, the Barbarians are dealing additional damage with melee weapons, and this additional damage is only halved if it's agile. So while agile is a slightly weaker in terms of damage route to go, it still benefits a bit from raging. It's not completely out of the woods. So some of these agiles may be useful if you're going that route. Not really much more to say on those. The specialization ability for the Animal Instinct is you increase the damage die for unarmed attacks granted by your chosen ability by 1 step. Remember, this was at level 7, the specialization ability. And the additional damage from your rage from 2 to 5 for the chosen animal's unarmed attacks. The frog's tongue attack and deer's antler gain reach of 10 feet. And when you get greater weapon specialization, the damage from rage goes from 5 to 12, which is massive numbers. Though again, agile is half of this, so this claw is only doing +6 at greater, and what, 2 instead of 1 at the regular specialization. Not saying it's bad, just be aware of this. You do gain resistance to piercing and slashing damage, which means an animal barbarian fighting an animal barbarian kind of still has no reason to switch to claws. Because they have resistance to both types, you might as well do the one that's doing the more damage. Dragon Instinct. I always seem to like these type of things whenever they try to bring in dragons. It's always good to have elemental attacks. And in this case, you get your standard lines of acid, electricity, cones, lines, cones, most of your elements, so on and so forth. I would point out, though, I haven't gone through all the enemies, but I'm going to assume, I am making an assumption here that any of you guys are free to correct me in the chats below, that the elemental alignments or the rate of elements due to how enemies tend to boil down to certain elements exists. Sonic, acid, lightning, ice, and fire is the order of preference I generally go with. I do see here that they include poison. I don't know where in the acronym SALIF or SALIFE poison would fit now that that is a fairly common damage type from what I've heard of. But it basically used to be, and I think I've covered this in a previous video, for Pathfinder and D&D 3.5. And I think it mostly holds up for 5th as well, though slightly maybe closer. That the most resistant type was fire. The second was ice, lightning, acid, and then sonic was only at 3.5. The only person who had resistance to sonic was like a distraction, which is some weird dinosaur that howled at you and did sonic damage. It was the weirdest thing. And coupled with the fact that in terms of doing damage to objects, Acid generally always did full damage as opposed to reduced damage like the other elements. And Sonic for crystalline objects did double damage. So that was where that acronym came from. I don't know where poison fits in that. You may want to, like I said, someone's free to correct me if the order of the letters has changed a bit. But in my opinion, and I don't know where poison would go, since you generally can't get Sonic off the dragons, you kind of want to go for acid if you want to try to be doing more damage or not being resisted as much. Again, if you want to do something for role-playing or lore reasons, you're free to choose whatever you want. I'm just saying acid tends to be the one that's least resisted. In which case, you tend to go for a black or a copper. I do see here, though, that they, as I point out, they have a cone of poison. Green, I think, used to also do acid. But now they switched them over to poison, and they're the only ones to do poison. So depending upon where poison lists in this, you may end up wanting to just do green. Before we continue on, though, there are some key terms, especially when we go into the feats. A flourish is an action that can only be done once a turn. An instinct, well, we already know what instinct is. Open should be opening, really. I think they just saved some letters there. Says you can only do it if it's your first action in a turn. And rage is, of course, raging. The anathema for dragon is letting a personal insult against you slide. Choose whether your character respects or abhors your dragon type. If you respect your dragon, defying such a dragon is also an anathema. And if you abhor your dragon, failing to defeat a dragon that dragon you come across is your anathema. So that's kind of on you, because respect, I feel, would be easier to roleplay and get away with. Dragon says, hey, I kind of want you to do it. Okay, cool. You can leave the situation and then maybe have a day of downtime if you don't want to fulfill that request, after all. Abhorring it says, well, what if I don't want to fight you today? You know, maybe it's too powerful a dragon. Maybe I don't want to fight you today, but it doesn't mean the dragon didn't know you were there. So you avoided the fight. You immediately have 24 hours of I can't use my abilities, and the dragon chases you down to fight you afterwards. Just be aware of that between the two, I think respect is easier to pull off, just because it's easier to shrug your shoulder and say, oh, I don't care. You know, I'll just blow a day of downtime to get rid of this anathema if I really don't think I could do that. Whereas abhorring a DM who wants to do the fight or who is railroading a fight, not that a good DM would, but some DMs do. A DM who is railroading the fight might end up punishing you for avoiding the fight if he makes the fight happen too soon. Draconic Rage. While raging, you can increase the additional damage from rage from 2 to 4. Not that big of an increase. And change its weapon damage type to match that of your breath weapon, instead of the damage type for your weapon or unarmored attack. Now, that is something, because what that says is you can change the additional damage from rage and its damage type to match that of your dragon's breath weapon. I believe the its here is referring is, of course, to the extra damage from raging, and the ability to do elemental damage, as minor as it is useful for overcoming regenerations and similar effects. In which case, if that's what you're going for, it might actually behoove you to go to one of the more common elements, since trolls and alike tend to be more negated by fire than acid, though there are some that are negated by acid, so maybe just stick with that. If you do this, your rage action gains arcane and evocation traits as well. If you do this, you can increase and can do this. So if you're in an area where arcane and or evocation would be against you, you can choose not to do this to do the lesser damage, but still not have that weakness. Specialization ability at level 7, the damage increases from 4 to 8, and at greater specialization increases from 8 to 16. 16 extra damage on an attack being very good, and it's the extra damage of an element, which means this generally just bypasses most damage reductions anyways, because this extra damage will have been elemental, which is fantastic. Fan-freaking-tastical. Though, oddly enough, as it is extra damage, it is still halved on an agile weapon. So you'd only be doing 8 acid damage. Raging resistance, you resist piercing damage only, and the damage type of your dragon's breath weapon. So you resist your element, and in terms of things like this, you only resist piercing, which means someone may want to switch over to slashing, at least if they're an animal type. Giant instinct. Okay, this is foundationally different than the rest of these, and it tickles me inside how open some of this reads. Your anathema is failing to face a personal challenge of strength, i.e., someone challenges you to an arm wrestling tournament, or someone says they're stronger than you. You have to prove you're stronger. Doesn't necessarily say failing to overcome a person. It says failing to face. So just do it. Even if you lose, that's not an anathema. You still tried. It's not failing to overcome a personal challenge of strength, which I find to be weird. Titan Mauler, the instinct ability. You can use a weapon built for a large creature if you are small or medium. If you're not small or medium, you can use a weapon built for a creature one size larger than you. You gain access to one weapon one size larger than you of any weapon type otherwise available at character creation. It has a normal price and bulk for a weapon. When wielding such a weapon, increase your additional damage from rage from 2 to 6, but you have the clumsy 1 condition because the weapon's unwieldy. You cannot remove this clumsy condition or ignore its penalties by any means while wielding it. Here's what tickles me about this. It basically almost reads like a flat bonus all the way through. If you are medium or larger, you use a weapon larger than you by one size category. Medium uses large uses huge or whatever, so on and so forth. But small gets to use a weapon 2 sizes greater than himself. Though I would point out, at character creation, you only get 1 size larger. A small creature can use a weapon 2 sizes larger than himself, with only getting a clumsy 1 condition, which is really good. Clumsy 1 basically is just a penalty to dex-based things, certain skills, your AC, and your reflex saves. So you lower your AC by 1 to use a weapon 2 sizes larger than you. This will get stronger and better later and have a gray area. But I really like the fact that you're using a bigger weapon, which, by the way, is a size which is a core die difference higher. Just a core die difference higher, and your rage with it is even better. This is fundamentally just more raw damage, which, 1, for a barbarian is fantastic, and 2, especially because of that weird small size issue, that's going to get key. That is going to become key. It's the gap of description here is you can use a weapon built for large if you're small, i.e. you can use weapons 2 size categories larger than yourself. That's what they're saying here. You're small, you can use a weapon 2 size categories larger than yourself. If you become enlarged for some reason, your weapon gets enlarged as well. Like you don't get and then it stay there. Like everything goes up. So this can be a really, really large weapon. If you can find some way to make yourself perpetually enlarged to medium, then your weapon, assuming you never let go of it, will not be large. It'll be larger than large. And there are things later on that do such an effect already, which is pretty amazing. Specialization ability, that extra damage goes from 6 to 10, and at greater it goes from 10 to 18. So you get extra rage damage than everyone else has had thus far. It's only by 2, admittedly, but you do get it. It is up to 18, and you are doing larger die sizes of damage. And later on, in enchantments and stuff, there are certain things that are based upon your die size of damage. So, could be useful. Though, admittedly, you don't tend to get multiple die. So I think there is diminishing returns on this. It's kind of weird. We'll discuss that when I discuss equipment. You resist bludgeoning damage, and your choice of cold, electricity, or fire chosen when you gain raging resistance. So, 1, bludgeoning. a lot of things tend to either be piercing or slashing. Bludgeoning is slightly the more rare damage type to be had in that type of situation. And you get to choose cold, electricity, or fire. When doing resistances, you tend to have to do the acronym backwards, because most everything that is resistant to an element tends to do damage of that element's type. So the most common element you're going to be facing against in terms of damage tends to be fire. So that would be probably one of the ones you'd want to choose for resistances if you're going with that, since it's not tied into your damage. Again, I haven't gone through the monster manual, so I haven't broken down all the numbers to see how many things do this element. I'm using old 3.5 and Pathfinder first edition numbers here for my assumptions. However, I'm just going to flat out say off my assumptions that there is a class that makes you resistant to those three common elements: fire, ice, and lightning. So the bottom three of the old Salif acronym, I'm going to hold are in that same position. Just off the fact that there's a class, a subclass that already gets resistance to what I already stated was the three most common elements. Their order may be different, but I'm willing to bet that they're still in the bottom three. Spirit instinct. Your anathemas, disrespecting corpses or spirits. Defending yourself against undead creatures, however, allowed. Just don't disrespect them. Spirit rage. When you're raging, increase your damage from rage from 2 to 3 and deal negative or positive damage instead of the normal damage type for your weapon or unarmed attack. I love this. This isn't as great as Giant. Giant still... Oh, I skipped Fury. I think I skipped Fury. I'll go back to Fury. I apologize for skipping one. But if we compare this real quick to the elemental one from this, you can increase the additional damage from rage and change its damage type. So that one appears to be saying the additional damage type is changed. This one specifically says you can increase your damage from 2 to 3 and deal negative or positive damage instead of the normal damage type for your weapon. This one appears to replace the entire weapons damage type. Switching it to positive or negative, I don't even know where positive or negative stands on the whole elemental Salif equation, but the point being, though, that none of it is physical anymore. So you're good for bypassing a lot of damage reductions, and it says choose each time you rage. So you can choose to do negative versus positive things. You can choose to do positive versus negative things. You can switch it. You are not tied to what you're fighting, which means as a whole, you're more likely to be able to use this even greater than the elemental ones, because you just choose whichever one is not resisted by your opponent if they have resistance to one of these. If you choose to deal negative or positive damage, your weapon or unarmed attack gains Ghost Touch, gains the effects of the Ghost Touch property rune for free. This is just off your core rage ability. You just get Ghost Touch, which makes it more effective against corporeal creatures, and your rage action then gains the divine and necromancy traits, plus negative or positive as appropriate. This is actually pretty powerful. I do like this. This is pretty good. And for role-playing lore reasons, it's not weak mechanically. So if you want to choose this for a role-playing thing as like an actual spiritual, like almost shaman barbarian, it's fantastic. It's awesome. Specialization ability, your damage increases to 7, and greater, your damage increases to 13, which is a bit of damage, not as big as the giant, and I think slightly larger than the dragon and animal. Let me confirm. No, dragon was higher, so it's about in the middle, but it's out. You can just choose what the damage is for the entire attack, which is pretty great considering you can switch it to not be physical types. And your resistances, you resist negative damage. You don't get to choose, unfortunately, as well as damage dealt by the attacks and abilities of undead creatures, regardless of type. Now, that one is pretty useful. It's just undead creatures, attacks, and abilities, which means you could argue and say that this would apply to anything they're doing, depending upon how that works, because it says attacks and abilities regardless of damage type. I don't even think that's arguable. I think that's actually intended. I think someone might try to argue that it doesn't do that, in which case I would err on the side of it does. So this is pretty good. I would rate this like up there with Giant. Though personally, I prefer giant just because I feel like somehow there's a way to really exploit the increased weapon size. And the one I accidentally skipped, Fury, you don't have an anathema or instinct ability. Instead, you get an extra first level feat. This is the human of Barbarians. Specialization increases from 2 to 6, and at greater increases all the way up to 12. And you resist physical weapon damage, but not physical damage from other sources, such as unarmed attacks. So you just resist weapons, regardless of the damage type. This is a rather vanilla one. There's not, extra feat and extra first level specific barbarian feat. So there better be multiple that are worth it. Otherwise, this isn't really a good instinct ability now, is it? Specialization, doing 12. It's not the greatest. I think it's about in the middle, third or fourth position. But the ability to resist weapon damage, as long as it's physical, but the ability to resist weapon damage of all 3 types is pretty useful. Now we move on to the feats. Acute vision. You get dark vision. There were a ton of races that had the option to grant you dark vision. So while for class abilities, this is pretty okay. This is a pretty good choice. There were a lot of classes that already kind of gave you this type of ability. So because of how common it is, I'm not, at least in terms of getting an extra first level feat, I'm not thinking it's that high. It's not bad. It's just common. It's baseline. Moment of Clarity is a rage action that takes an action, so you have to be raging to do this. You push back your rage for a moment in order to think clearly. Until the end of this turn, you can use actions with a concentrate trait, even if those actions don't have the rage trait. Basically, you take this feat if you want to use any action that you normally can't use during rage. It takes an action to do an action, which is pretty good. There's gonna be a build somewhere that can use this to an advantage. And because it's an action, if you combine it with that free action thing we saw earlier for Barbarian, then it's possible using Mighty Rage, which is admittedly at level 11. It's possible at level 11 to rage, and in the very same action as raging, for free, do an action that you cannot do while raging. Like, that's pretty good. The idea here being, like, the situation you would use this in is if, one, you need extra health or to do extra damage, but you also right now need to be doing a skill. Like, the order of precedence would be you're trying to do something and then you want to rage immediately afterwards. But because of this, you combine these two together and you rage and then do your skill and then continue on doing whatever you were going to be doing anyways. So that's actually pretty good. I can see quite a few situations where that would come up. That's not like a must take feat, but I could see it being a feat you would choose as the extra feat if you for some reason chose Fury. Unless, there's nothing else better. Raging Intimidation. When you are raging, you demoralize and scare to death actions from the Intimidation skill and Intimidation skill feat gain the rage trait, allowing you to use them while raging. As soon as you meet the prerequisites for the skill feats Intimidating Glare and Scare to Death, you gain those feats. It's a feat that gives you feats. That's pretty good. Like, it just says, as soon as you meet the prerequisites. In terms of just feat economy, like if that's what you're going for and you're doing an intimidation build, this would clearly be a key feat. You're taking one feat to allow you to do 2 skills, but also to give you 2 feats for free. One of those feats is the feat that this feat lets you use while raging. So this would be a good feat to take, even if it only let you do those 2 abilities while raging, but it also gives you 2 feats for free. So if you're doing anything remotely close to intimidation, this is a must buy. This is hands down a must buy if you're doing that type of build. It lets you get more feats. You get more oomph in your build, and you can actually do it while raging. Just because of that, it's kind of required. You're a barbarian who rages. You're doing an intimidate thing, and you want to do that, you're going to need to take this anyways. Two ways it's a mandatory buy, but only if you're doing intimidation type things. Raging Thrower. You can apply the additional damage from your rage to your thrown weapon attacks. If you have the brutal critical feat or the devastator class feature, apply their benefits to thrown weapon attacks. This might be a personal opinion, but I've never been a fan of thrown weapons. I just really, really have not been a fan of thrown weapons. Regular ranged weapons, you have an ammo pile, so you're constantly going through it, so you can just keep doing it. Thrown weapons, you throw it. And then you have no weapon. There's a book series literally called like The Dwarves. And it's like Revenge of the Dwarves, Fury of the Dwarves, whatever. Which is a very good book series, by the way. But there's even a dwarf barbarian. Like there's a dwarf who has anger problems in this book, who his big teaching point for the main character is never throw your last weapon. Because I think the first battle the main character is in, he has an axe and he chucks it. And then the other dwarf has to save him. And he's like, never throw your last weapon. And that's basically why I don't like thrown weapons. If you're down to your last weapon, you can't throw it or else you don't have a weapon. Or you throw it, in which case now you don't have a weapon. And for enchantment purposes, if you want to throw lots of weapons, you don't have to enchant lots of weapons unless you get returning. In which case you have to blow a bunch of enchantments to just use your weapon like everyone else uses ranged weapons. I do not like thrown. You may like thrown, and if you're doing a thrown build, of course you have to take this. But I've never once seen the purpose of a throwing weapon build. I don't like the idea. Like, I get lore and role-playing wise why those are always options, but mechanically, I've never seen the purpose of throwing weapons. You are free to argue with me in the chat down below, and I feel like I probably just made a few of you salty, but you're probably not gonna change my mind. I've never seen the purpose of throwing weapons. They just baffle me. Other than like a rogue with ridiculous amount of like little tiny throwing daggers that they're using to like just to annoy people. You know what I'm saying? Not in terms of damage, not in terms of something like Barbarian would be trying to do with it. Sudden charge, 2 actions, flourish, open. Means you can only do it once a turn. This 2 actions, of course. That's kind of a weird thing. And open means this has to be your first action that round. You cannot do sudden charge after you do something else. With a quick sprint, you can dash up to your foe and swing. Stride twice. If you end your movement within melee range of at least one enemy, you can make a melee strike against that enemy. It's charge. It's charge, except like at quadruple distance, because a dash is a double move, I think. So you get to, oh no, it's not dash, it's stride. So yeah, it's charge. You can use sudden charge while burrowing, climbing, flying, or swimming, instead of striding to the corresponding movement type. So I have a question about this, which is a bit off. I don't think you can use this as an opening salvo for a barbarian. I think they wanted it to be, but I think by definition, it cannot be. Maybe. I don't know. So this is an open ability, which means it has to be the first action you do that turn, and it takes 2 actions. Let me reread open again. These maneuvers work only as your first salvo. You can use an open action only if you have not used an action with the attack or open trait this turn. No, I do take that back, because the other thing is not an attack action. I do take that back. You can open with it. My thought was somehow I'd forgotten about the attack portion of that and the open one, the last sentence. But a good thing, or at least I think purposely built in one, was that greater rage ability that we saw. Where are you? Where, as part of your rage action, you could make it take 2 actions to do a 2 activity with a rage trait, which means you could rage while immediately sudden charging. So yeah, that's kind of the build they're going for. For some reason, I had it in my head that open could only work if it was your first action, not your first attack action. So that does mean open is less restrictive than I thought it was. I take back my earlier statement. I was slightly wrong. I don't know how I missed that in my first read through. Acute scent. You need acute vision or dark vision. So basically, you need dark vision, because acute vision gave you dark vision. The prerequisite should just be, do you have dark vision? And they're not wrong by saying acute vision or dark vision. It's just redundant, since acute vision gave you dark vision. Nothing for role-playing for you to be aware of, I just want to address the fact that I find that that's redundant. When you rage, your sense of smell improves. You gain imprecise scent with a range of 30 feet. It's pretty good. It's a good one. Again, same issue with acute vision, or not same issue, but just to point out, it just doubles down that acute vision. Just choose a class that has dark vision. You can save your first feat for something else and then get acute scent at second level. Might as well. Point out, though, we're now in second level feats. We went over all the first ones. I didn't see too much that would want me to take that extra first level rage feat. A lot of these don't even stack together well. Sudden charge couldn't mix with raging thrower. Really couldn't easily mix with moment of clarity either, because you're having to do it as... I don't understand. I understand, but I don't understand. I do not see the major benefit to the Fury Instinct's instinct ability. A lot of other instinct abilities got better as you leveled up too. This one just doesn't. You'd think maybe at like what greater specialization it would give you like an extra 5th or 9th feat. You know what I'm saying? Just really weak for how vanilla it is. But acute scent is acute scent. It's pretty useful if you want scent. Okay, nothing against that. I would suggest maybe having a class that has dark vision. No need to blow your first level feat to do it. Otherwise, you might have to blow your first level feat or stick with Fury as opposed to being the world's smallest midget of justice. Like, I don't understand. Furious finish. Desperate to finish a fight, you make a strike. If it hits, you gain a circumstance bonus to damage equal to the number of rounds remaining in your rage. After this strike, your rage immediately ends, however, and you are fatigued until you rest for at least 10 minutes. Why? As far as I can tell, maximum use to get that 10 rounds means you have to use Furious Finish on the first round. So you're raging to immediately blow it your entire rage for 10 extra damage. Or, assuming a minimum of 1 attack per round, every round you get the increased rage damage, which tends to be more than a 10 damage increase every round. A bunch of time it was elemental damage every round. Or blow it all in one round for far less damage. And as a trade-off for doing a ton less damage, you can't rage for 10 minutes and you're fatigued, so you have a massive penalty. Good. I love paying people money for the privilege of paying people money. No. And its own word implies you would use it the opposite way, where you'd use it at the end for 1 extra damage? Why? Why? This is such a goofy feat. Like, core to itself, by itself, this thing is utterly stupid. I do not like this feat. I don't even see a lore reason for doing it. And even goofier thing is it's a circumstance bonus. So if something else is already giving you a circumstance bonus, you've negated one or the other. So you might not even get your full 10. You might have only increased yourself by 2. Why? I don't understand. No escape is a reaction when a foe tries to move away from you. You can move up to your speed, following the foe and keeping in reach throughout its movement until it stops or you have moved your full speed. You can use no escape with other movement types if you have them. That's actually pretty funny and good. Just slowly chase someone around as they try to leave you. This type of ability right here, no escape, is like the perfect thing for an actual I'm tanking build, which is generally been sorely missing from Barbarian despite their massive health. which is the ability to force an opponent to deal with you. And no escape, always keeping them within range, is a real good way to force the enemy to deal with you, assuming you have the movement to keep up with them. Second wind. You can enter a second rage, but afterward you need to catch your breath. You can rage without waiting for 1 minute after the previous rage. But when you end the second rage, you are fatigued until you rest for 10 minutes. Now we're talking about the ability to finally properly rage cycle. You just now need to be able to find a way to remove and eliminate fatigue. So now they've kind of reintroduced what they tried to negate before. Why? Legit question. Anybody's free to respond to this in chat what your theories behind this are. Because this is why I went to such a big deal over it when I mentioned it before. The only reason I could think of for that flat minute is to negate rage cycling, of which it went way overstep to negate rage cycling. But then they introduce a feat to reintroduce rage cycling at level 2. Why would you put in a mechanic by itself that would thoroughly cripple barbarians compared to how they used to work? Way overstepped. Only to try to put in something to walk it back at level 2. And to make this clear, that 1 round thing is kind of stupid anyways. So this is a level 2 feat that's almost pointless at level 17. Because, yeah, you can't do it round after round, but you could do it 1 round afterwards. So the entire class ability for your limitation on raging doesn't make sense. Yes, you have the ability, the debuff of you're fatigued until you rest for 10 minutes. But that's what raging already had. Like, it was in this thing, it's only for 1 minute, but the core idea or whatever, the core idea remains the same though. If I can remove fatigue, I remove the restriction. If I remove the restriction, I can rage cycle. So what is the purpose of the level 17 ability if a level 2 feat negates it? At this point, we're only 1 card short of a proper hand here. We only need the ability to be immune or remove fatigue. That's it. And even with that, raging is good in battles, and a round is 6 seconds. A minute is therefore 10 rounds. Between these two, you have either the ability to rage cycle or 20 rounds worth of rage. But you have to be tired for 10 minutes after the second one. What this has applied so far is the ability to do a singular rage cycle. If there's any ability that would be dependent upon the old-fashioned idea of a rage cycle, which at some point there's going to be, even if there's not now. But as long as I can remove the fatigue, I can start the rage engine going. Why is there a mechanic built in to make it so I can't rage cycle? One which, read as written, is way too limiting. So that they can kind of walk it back at level 17 and then practically completely get rid of it at level 2. In terms of how mechanics works, I would have to say, as long as you have somewhere between your party or yourself an ability to get rid of fatigue, Second Wind is likely to become a requirement in practically every build that involves rage abilities. If you could find a way to become immune to rage, or to cure it basically for an action, Second Wind makes Furious Finish actually useful. Because what you do is, you rage, you Furious Finish, turning it for an extra 10 damage for that attack. And then you cycle back into a rage. Because the thing that they're missing from these type of things, like Furious Finish and Second Wind, is their own keyword of Flourish, which is you can only do it once per turn. They put Flourish on an ability that has 2 things, so you'd think that already you couldn't only do that once per turn. They didn't do it on something like Second Wind or Furious Finish, which would make sense if you could only do it once per turn. As a matter of fact, hold on, while I'm thinking, yeah, this one just immediately ends your rage. But there's nothing to stop you from raging, which is an action as far as I understand. Raging. Where is raging? I've lost rage. Rage was 1 action, correct? Just make sure I'm not crazy. Rage was 1 action. And then Mighty Rage lets you do a rage action during that same action. And that rage action could be Furious Finish. So now you've ended your rage. But then you are fatigued. But you get to immediately enter rage anyways. Or does Second Wind negate that fatigue? If you can find a way to remove fatigue and or just be immune to it, you can use Second Rage to rage, free action on raging, Furious Finish. 3 times around. They did so much work to remove the rage cycle, and then at level 2, they've basically all but put it back in practically stronger than it was before. I don't understand. Either I was right the first time, and they're trying to overstep their bounds and get rid of rage cycle, or I'm right this time, and some other developer, writer, or somebody put in the ability way too far to negate that ability so as to make it possibly be stronger than before. Which is weird. Because nothing here says you can't do this if you're immune to fatigue. Nothing here says that the fatigue can't be cured. So if you are immune to fatigue, then you could rage as an action. Did rage have flourish? Unless I'm crazy. Unless there's some core thing that I'm missing. I don't understand what is to stop you from raging, free action, furious finishing, second winding back into a rage. As soon as you're immune to fatigue, which is the one thing right now that's stopping this. You flat out probably need to be immune to fatigue so that you don't have to waste an action to do this. You could furious finish 3 times in a round. Which is really weird. Oh, the idea that both of these make you fatigued for 10 minutes. Do they stack? If I furious finish, second wind a furious finish, am I fatigued? Like by default. Am I fatigued for 10, 20, or 30 minutes? Or do I go, I probably go past like exhausted or something. But so weird. Shake it off for 1 action. You concentrate on your rage, overcoming fear, and fighting back sickness. Reduce your fright and condition value by 1. There's no check on that one. Like, but before we do anything, just at 1 action, reduce your fright condition value by 1. That's pretty good. It's only in niche circumstances, but that's pretty good. And you can attempt a fortitude save to recover from sickened condition. Reduce your sickened condition value by 1 on the fail, but not crit fail, 2 on success, or 3 on critical success. Both those are really good. If you like being resistant to things, those are really good. For second level things, though, they have a lot of good ones. They're all very, very good. Furious Finish is utterly pointless. Unless you get immunity fatigue, in which case second wind makes it one of the more OP abilities. So it's either utterly pointless or utterly OP, depending upon how you get to treat fatigue, which is a core if. Very, very big core if. But no escape lets you follow people. That's very good. Shake it off. Slightly niche situation, but guaranteed practically in success. Very good as well. 4th level, fast movement. While you're raging, you get a plus 10 bonus to your speed. Okay. Raging, which, by the way, fast movement with no escape. That's just good old-fashioned fun right there. Raging athlete. You have to be expert in athletics. Physical obstacles cannot hold back your fury. While you're raging, you gain a climb speed and swim speed equal to your land speed, and a DC of high jumps and long jumps decreases by 10. Your leap distance increases by 5 when you jump horizontally and by 2 when you jump vertically. That's very good in that it gives you a climb and swim speed and equal to your land speed, which fast movement increases that. So another one where having multiple of the ones together would be better than just having one. Climb speed and swim speed just by default tends to overcome a lot of limitations that climbing and swimming tends to give you. So yeah, that's already a pretty good start. You just need to be an expert in athletics. Swipe, flourish, 2 actions. Again, to point out another ability that takes 2 actions, but as a flourish. It's really weird in my opinion. You make a wide arcing swing, make a single melee striking parry attack results against up to 2 foes. It's cleave. Each of which must be within your melee reach and adjacent to each other. Bolt damage only once and apply to each creature you hit. Swipe counts as 2 attacks for your multiple attack penalty. If you're using a weapon with a sweep trait, this modifier applies to all your swipe attacks. So for 2 attack actions, you get to make 1 attack roll, but it counts as 2 attacks for all penalties pertaining to how many times you attacked. You only roll your damage once. This is a really weak cleave. Excepting, of course, for the sweep trait. It just sounds like a lot of rigmarole. Lot of rigmarole for I don't understand why. For only 2. And you can only do it once in a round. Hard limit there. Hard limit there. If I'm attacking 2 people, because it has to be 2 people, I would if I have 2 attacks to do, you're going to want to guarantee you drop 1 guy first. There's no reason to split up your attack if you don't know the first guy is going to be dropping. Like, the big issue to this is you don't get to choose this. Like, this should, maybe, I would maybe think this would be like 1 attack with a trigger based upon you just drop someone, like how cleave is kind of supposed to maybe work. Like, you're choosing to commit 2 attack actions to attack 2 different people, but you don't know if you drop the first one. So if I don't know if I drop the first one, surely I just want the second attack to hit the first guy? The only benefit to this, the only benefit that I really see to this is that I think you don't have the attack penalty because it's only the 1 attack roll. So you get a slight attack buff versus the second guy. That's about it. In which case, no, I don't even. Just attack 1 guy until he's dead. You're a barbarian. You're not about that tactical stuff. The old way cleave used to work was because you were just brutalizing everyone around you. This is like you're trying to be tactical for some reason. I kind of don't like it. Like, I know what it's based upon and what it's supposed to represent, but mechanically, it just doesn't really make sense. Reaction, wounded rage. If you take damage, you get to rage. This allows you to do an action that when it's not your turn. Because you rage. Oh, no, it doesn't. Maybe it does. It is a free action. That one just says you rage when you take the damage. Mighty Rage says you use the rage action on your turn. So yeah, no. It allows you to rage, but you don't get to do the benefits of Mighty Rage. So that's a bit of a slight weakness. And then that's really it for 4th. Raging Athlete and Fast Movement would be my recommendations. 6th level, Animal Skin. This only applies if you have Animal Instinct. Your proficiency in Unarmored Defense increases to Expert. While you're raging and unarmored, your skin transforms. You gain a +1 stats bonus to AC instead of taking the normal -1 penalty to AC. To point out, this is a 2 difference. That's a 10% harder to hit you difference, not a 5. Don't just think of that as a +1. That's the equivalent of a +2. If you have greater Juggernaut class feature, it increases to a +2, and the thickness of your hide gives you a dex modifier cap to your AC of 3. So, the Juggernaut one increases it to 3 instead of a -1, which is a +3 bonus to your AC, which is really good.
but the thickness of your hide caps your dex mod to 3. I would suggest taking this. All in all, if you have Animal Instinct, all in all, I think this is a net gain for you. Yes, it reduced your max AC, but it increased your AC, assuming you have the Juggernaut feature, by 3. If you get rid of that bonus, your dex modifier cap to AC would have had to have been a 6 or higher for this to mitigate itself. Or I should say you have to be higher. If you have a dex mod of 6, and I reduce it by 3, but increase my AC by 3, these are even, in which case I've kind of maybe blown a feat for no reason, ignoring what this might be a prerequisite for. If your AC modifier is higher than a 6, which is a 7, which means you have a dex modifier of 24, then this is actually nerfing your AC. That's a really high dexterity in a game that's trying to make it so you can't have really high dex to make this feat not be in your favor. So, kind of useful. It's kind of useful. Attack of opportunity. If a creature within your reach uses manipulate or move, makes a ranged attack, or leaves a square during a move it's using. So, to confirm, what triggers this is if they don't attack you, if they don't do an attack, if they do a manipulate, if they do a move, if they make a ranged attack, or they move a square, or leaves a square during a move action it's using. This attack of opportunity has like 3 triggers on the exact same idea. If they move, if it uses a manipulate action, makes sense. Or a move action. Or a move action. Yeah, or a move action. That's right. Everything's just actions now. I was about to think 3.5 standards. Makes a ranged attack. Makes sense. Or leaves a square during a move action it's using. But the move action it's using already triggered your attack of opportunity. So I think the second definition of this is if they happen to move through your threatened square. In which case, they could have just said, if they move out of a square you threaten, not uses a move action within your... They kind of went overly specific here, and it's kind of weird. The old wording used to just make sense. Basically, it's attack of opportunity. It says attack of opportunity, it's attack of opportunity. If they do something that would provoke a normal attack of opportunity, congratulations, you finally get to make an attack of opportunity. Huzzah. You swat a foe that leaves an opening. Make a melee strike against a triggering creature. If your attack is a critical hit and the trigger was a manipulate action, you in fact get to disrupt that action. The strike does not count towards your multiple attack penalty, but your multiple attack penalty does not apply to this strike. Cool. It's attack of opportunity. I do like that you interrupt their manipulate action. If they're trying to take something out of their bag, you slap their hand and they can't take it out of their bag. I like that. Brutal bully.
Get to be an expert in athletics. You push your foes while raging. When you successfully disarm, grapple, shove, or trip a foe, you deal that foe bludgeoning damage equal to your strength modifier. Add this to the damage from critical success to trip. I like the idea, but I'm not won over by the numbers. You're not going to have that high strength modifier. If you got to do like your unarmed damage plus strength modifier, I'd be like, yeah, this might be a good choice. But this is a feat at 6th level, and it's only going to do what, 4, 5, 6 damage? It's not a whole hell of a lot. I don't like it. Cleave. A proper cleave. You get to do this as a reaction to your melee strike, killing a creature or knocking it unconscious. You swing clear through one foe and into another. Make a melee strike against the second foe. As a reaction. This is way better. This is the way better idea than freaking, what was it? Swipe. I do not understand swipe. Swipe is very clearly some weird tactical version of a cleave that makes no sense. It's clearly based upon cleave, mostly works like a cleave. And I know, I'm trying to remember the name of it. I know there's an ability similar to this in like Pathfinder and something roughly translated from 3.5. But no, it's just you cleave. You're not a fighter. That's not your goal. Kill someone. Use your raw strength to kill someone. And when you kill them, look at the guy next to him and be like, you're next. Don't commit to 2 attacks. And you might miss versus 2. No. Doesn't make any sense.
Dragon's Rage Breath. 2 actions.
At least this one doesn't have fucking flourish, so that's good. It's off of the dragons. You haven't used this ability since the requirements are you have not used this ability since you last raged. I'm guessing they means you haven't used this, you can only use it once during a rage, since if I rage, then that, even if I'm in the rage, that is the last time I raged. I think that means you can only use this once per rage, in which case, rage cycling. Rage Hands. You breathe deep and exhale a powerful energy in a 30-foot cone or 60-foot line, dealing 1d6 damage per level. The area and damage type match those of your dragon. Use this ability in the last hour. The area and the damage are halved. In rage cycle. Are halved. Each creature in the area must attempt a basic reflex save. So, half rage cycle. No, it halves the damage in the area, but if you have an unlimited rage cycle going, I mean, it takes 2 actions. You're doing Dragon Instinct. I mean, I already weighed in on that. It seemed okay, but I wasn't that won over by it. Like, it's good. It's good. But I prefer the giant one. There are better things to be doing. There are better things to be doing, but if you are already for some reason doing a rage cycle, I mean, at least you have the opportunity to, you know, maybe do extra acid damage. Like, basically, the idea for this is what I would do this for. Like, the thing I would do this for is for that cone of acid. If you could somehow rage cycle while doing cone of acid breath weapons, at half range is a 15-foot cone, which means 15-foot radius circle at the end of it of acid damage. You're constantly just breathing through a wall. Even if it's only 1d6 damage every 2 levels, the ability to just go through a wall is why I love acid. It's got a utility purpose, less effective in combat, but again, if you can somehow generate a rage cycle, this means no wall will stop you unless it's acid resistant. Giant stature. Giant. You grow to incredible size. You become large, increasing your reach by 5 feet and gaining clumsy 1 condition. So because your weapon, you probably basically have clumsy 2 now. Until you stop raging. Your equipment grows with you. Here's where they start wording things poorly. Medium-sized creature has a large weapon. Medium-sized creature gets increased by 1 to large, and the large weapon also increases by 1 to 1 above large. Small creature already used large weapon, not 1 weapon bigger. Like, everything around it said 1 weapon bigger, but you can use large no matter what. So if a small creature doesn't become 1 size category larger, they become large. So a small creature goes up 2 size categories, is now a large creature who is using a weapon 2 size categories larger than large for a weapon, with reach increased by 5 feet. Though, admittedly, a few extra penalties to their AC. Because then you have, like, clumsy, the weapon, and you have their penalty to AC. So, easier to hit, also whatever happens with being large. So, wicked easy to hit, but come on. Little creature, large creature, unnecessarily gigantic axe. Because remember, every size category you go up, your weight. I know they don't have weight in this. They use the bulk system. But in terms of raw weight, just for the goofiness of this, you are increasing a large weapon's weight by 8 when it goes up 1 size category larger, and then by 8 again when it goes up another one. So however heavy a large weapon is, has been increased by 64 in terms of weight. Like, and then you were small, so you were 64 larger to large, but I'm willing to bet that weapon weighs more than you by a fair amount. Like, your times 64 from 2 isn't going to be the same as times 64 from a weapon that generally would have weighed like 14. You get what I'm saying? Like, that weapon weighs a lot. If that's not selling you on doing the giant build, I don't know what will. That's an unnecessarily large axe. I love it. Spirits Interference. You call forth protective spirits.
Hold on real quick, just to make sure. Yeah, the giant's stature is large. How long does this last? Until you stop raging. So you can do this when you rage for free because of the greater rage thing at a higher level, admittedly. But you could just immediately become large. Level 6, or feat level of 6. You call for protective spirits to ward off ranged attacks until your rage ends. Anyone making a ranged attack against you must succeed at a DC 5 flat check or the attack misses. Basically, it's 20% evasion. You have concealment. 20% mischance. They've turned everything into this weird flat check thing to just cover what they already had going before. It's a 20% mischance. 5 or higher, they hit you. 1 to 4, they don't. 5, 10, 15, 20. You get a 20% mischance. They've just made it in the flat checks to make it harder to freaking notice what's going on. The spirits give you concealment without all the benefits of concealment. 8th level, Animal Rage. Upgrade to Animal Instinct. You can transform into your animal. You gain the effects of the 3rd level Animal Form spell, except you use your own stats, temporary hit points, and unarmed attacks instead of those granted by the animal form. You also retain the constant abilities of your gear. If your animal is a frog, your tongue reach increases to 15 feet. Suspending the transformation gains the rage trait. Ergo, you're allowed to cancel it. By rules, you probably wouldn't have been allowed to begin with. Okay, if you really want to be your animal. If that floats your boat, that blows your hair back. Cool. Furious Bully. Master in Athletics. While raging, gain a +2 circumstance bonus to athletics checks for attack actions. This is off of doing the other thing, like tripping and stuff like that. Okay, if that's what you're going for, I'm not saying it's a bad idea. That's clearly, this is only useful if that's what you're going for. If you're not doing an entire build around it, this feat is pointless. Renewed Vigor. You pause or recover your raging vigor. You regain temporary hit points equal to half your level plus your con mod. That's goofy. That's so goofy. You already gained temporary hit points equal to your level plus your con when you rage. So now you do the same thing, but only half your level. So it's less than when you rage, and it's temporary. So why? I don't like that. I really don't understand that one. Share Rage. You haven't used this ability since your last rage. So something that might be useful for rage cycling. You stoke an ally's fury. When you are raging, one willing creature in 30 feet gains a rage action, except they can still use concentrate actions. And here's where it begins. They gain the effects of rage, except they can still concentrate. The whole premise behind rage, the whole weakness, is you can't do concentrate actions while raging. Except now, you can. Do they gain the benefit of your rage? Stronger your rage? Do they get a stronger rage? I'm assuming no, but I'm just pointing out that they haven't really necessarily addressed it at this point. Again, there are things later and equipment and things that could change a whole bunch of things, and just as it reads. There's some things to be aware of because these only come in when they come in. If something affects at level 12, it doesn't necessarily affect it to level 12. You get what I'm saying? You don't start as a level 12 necessarily. The ability to concentrate while raging is very useful and could be used if you had 2 barbarians that had this share rage system who raged, shared the rage. Like if I rage to share a rage, and that makes you rage, but now you're raging and you have share rage, I cancel my rage, doing something like end it, and then you share rage back to me. And we're sharing the rage, but we can concentrate. Like, I know this takes a round to set up, and I might not be making the clearest sense, but there is a way with 2 barbarians that have shared rage to get each other to be raged and use concentrate. I don't think that's what they were going for, but it is a possibility to be raged without one of the major drawbacks of raging. It just takes like 2 barbarians. I don't know what all you would want to be doing with the concentrate action. I'm just saying it's there. Sudden Leap. You swing at a foe mid-leap. Make a leap, high jump, or long jump and attempt one melee strike at any point during your jump. Immediately after the strike, you fall to the ground if you're in the air, even if you haven't reached the maximum distance of your jump. If the distance you fall is no more than the height of your jump, you take no damage and land upright. When attempting a high jump or long jump during a sudden leap, determine the DC using the long jump DC and increase your maximum distance to double your speed. So this is weird. This begs a question. If the distance you fall is no more than the height of your jump, you take no damage. This begs a few questions. 1, if I jump under normal conditions, if I jump 20 feet in the air somehow and land exactly where I'm standing, did I take fall damage? Reasonable thought would be, well, no, because you had the ability to jump that high. You had the leg muscles to land it by default. You could say, though, that this implies no. Because this specifically now says, as long as you didn't fall greater than the height of your jump, you don't take fall damage. However, common sense then is, well, if you could already not take damage from doing just a standing high jump of ridiculous height, then that must mean that this verbiage is applying to if you fall extra. Which means, if we go with that interpretation, if I'm at the edge of a cliff and I jump up 10 feet, I could land 10 feet below, thus falling a total of 20 feet, but take no damage because I only fell the 10 feet. And my height was 10 feet. So the higher my high jump is, the further down I can fall. Which sounds ridiculous, I admit. That sounds really ridiculous, because for some reason, you couldn't jump straight down, but jumping up higher would make the further fall more survivable. Either one of these interpretations carries with it a situation that makes no sense, I admit. But they put a sentence in there that makes you wonder, why? Why does that read that way? Does everyone break their legs upon high jumping? Or does the barbarian need to jump really high to fall low? Actually, I think later on, I think they have something that upgrades this that makes it slightly clearer. The way this is written tickles me. The way this one's written tickles me. I just love how nonsense that sentence is. Thrash. You have to have grappled your foe. You thrash him around, taking bludgeoning damage equal to your strength modifier plus your ferocious specialization damage plus your rage damage. The foe must attempt a basic fort save against your DC. All right, it's at least a bit of damage. I like it. Your rage damage could be 16 elemental, so on and so forth. Bludgeoning damage, and your ferocious specialization damage. That's a fair bit of damage going on. That's not nothing. And there's no die rolling, so it's guaranteed damage. I kind of like that. For the level 8 ones, though, shared rage might be the strongest, depending upon how much of a teamwork you got. But if you're grappling, Thrash is definitely a good choice. Definitely a choice to go with. Sudden Leap maybe depends on your interpretation of... I know with Barbarian, I've said a bunch of these that are going to get, some people to maybe disagree with me. And please respond in the comments. Don't just get angry and leave a thumbs down. Because I admit some of my ideas are ridiculous, but come on. Even if some of them are wrong, you have to admit, they're the ones that wrote a goofy sentence. That begs a question. 10th level, come and get me. 1 action. You open yourself to attack so you can respond in turn. Until your rage ends, you are flat-footed, and damage rolls against you get a +2 circumstance bonus. If a creature hits you, that creature is flat-footed until the end of your next turn. If you hit it before the end of your next turn, you gain temporary hit points equal to your con mod, or double that on a critical hit. This does not sound good. No, I would not recommend this. I cannot recommend this. You already have a penalty to your AC. 1. 2, especially if you're doing the giant thing where you get bigger, you have a mega penalty to your AC. 2, making yourself flat-footed just unnecessarily makes it easy for people to hit you. One of your biggest ACs is probably going to be from your dex mod. So flat-footed is a major penalty to your AC. Next, I don't even know what are we on, 3 or 4? They still, for some reason, get a +2 bonus because they needed a bigger bonus to hit you. And then if they hit you, all you've done in kind is really made them flat-footed. So this is only really good against people whose ACs are mostly off of dex builds, in which case it's likely to be someone like a rogue or another barbarian, in which case you didn't want them to hit you. You really didn't, because the last thing is all you heal is your con mod. 4 points, 5 points, 6 points worth of healing, and you just gave them how much damage on your dumb ass? This is not a good trade. By itself right here, this is not a good trade. This is dumb. This is dumb. And not only that, but you're stuck with this now for the rest of your rage. 1 action activated and it lasts until the end of your rage. Holy crap. Holy crap. Is that a bad choice? No, don't do this. Do not do this. Because also, BT dubs, it doesn't say versus melee guys. It just says you're flat-footed. So what if someone hits you at range? Like at a range that you can't get to them within the round to make use of your they're now flat-footed thing. No, this is bad. You're going to die to a wizard and you're going to feel embarrassed for doing so. No, I'm sorry, but no, that is dumb. Furious Sprint, you rush forward, stride up to 5 times your speed in a straight line. You increase the number of actions this takes to 3, to stride up to 8 times your speed. It's run. It's run and super run, I grant you, but it's run. It's run. You get to go fast. If you have that with the thing from earlier where you already had greater speed, you're looking at an average of 30 speed, 40 speed. At level 10, you take this, you can go 50 foot in a round for 2, as opposed to, hold on. Let me do the math here. Or no, 3. That does make it 150. It's about to be like 1, 2, like, it's the full-on run that makes this good. Fury Sprint for 2 actions get 3 times your, no, it is 5 times your speed. Never mind. So yeah, so 200, never mind. I take that back. I got myself confused in the math there somehow. 5 times your speed for 2 actions instead of double your speed. That's a lot. And instead of 3, it's 8. That's a lot. So to point out, 2, 4, 5 is time and a half. For every 1, you got 2. And for every 2, you got a third, basically. Got an extra 3 for 2. And then for 3, it's basically time and a half still, because it's that, the 3, and then half would be like 1.5. They rounded it up, so it's a total of 8. So the math is still there. Like it's not like it's, I mean, it's slightly more cost efficient because you got the 0.5 out of it, but it's a good one. It's a good one for getting places fast. There's the only issue is you have to do it while you're raging, because it is in fact a rage ability. But it's good for getting places. If you can find some way to rage cycle, i.e., or just be immune to rage, then for all overland travel, at least in the short term, you might as well just treat your speed as if it's 8 times greater. If you can find some way to rage cycle, because they've tied a massive movement increase into a rage. Because compared to a normal 3 action move, you're doing 8. You're just better. Great Cleave. Your Fury carries weapon through multiple foes. When you cleave, if your strike also kills or knocks a target unconscious, you can continue it until you make a strike that does not knock a creature unconscious or kill them, or until there are no creatures adjacent to the most recent creature you attacked while cleaving, whichever comes first. Yes, I've always loved Cleave. Cleave is such a great feat. They kind of made it weird a bit in Pathfinder 1e, and the way I'm reading this is a slight, back to the original way Cleave and Great Cleave worked. And it was fantastic. And because this is how Cleave upgrades to Great Cleave, it's just even more reason why that weird tactical strike thing was stupid and nonsensical. Great Cleave is awesome. I love it. Knockback. If you hit someone, you can push them back 5 feet with a successful shove and then follow them for an action. Okay. I think all this did was... What did this do? Just same as doing a shove. I think maybe you don't provoke an attack of opportunity. It's shove without an attack of opportunity. No, because you don't even do attacks of opportunity in Pathfinder 2e unless they're allowed to. I'm gonna tell you the truth. I don't understand the purpose of this. Not that it's bad. I just mechanically don't understand what this gives you. Wouldn't you just normally be able to do the shove? Hold on. How did I not notice this in my first read through? I must have glossed over this somehow. The last action was a successful strike. Then you get to do an action after that says you push them 5 feet if you do a successful shove, and then you can follow them as normal. I'm ignoring that. That one's just goofy and pointless, in my opinion. Grapple. Yeah, there's more beneficial things to grappling. Terrifying Howl off of Intimidating Glare. Attempt intimidate checks to demoralize each creature in 30 feet, regardless of the result of your checks. Each creature is temporarily immune to Terrifying Howl for 1 minute. My issue with this is it does not say each enemy, it says each creature. So, could you accidentally intimidate your allies? Whoops. Don't get me wrong, it's not unheard of. Fireballs, things, it's not unheard of for people to hurt their own team, but whoops. Dragon's Rage Wing, if you did dragons. While you're raging, you gain a fly speed equal to your land speed. If you're flying when your rage ends, you start to fall, but the transformation only completes at the last moment. So you take no damage from the fall and land standing up. That's actually pretty good. That is actually pretty good because it keeps you safe. If something were to like make you unconscious, so your rage ends, you fall safely, is the way I read this. The way I read this is no matter what, you fall safely. You can't derage someone in the air and just watch them plummet. So that's pretty good. Furious Grab, another thing off of grapple. Last action was successful strike, and either you have a hand free or strike, you use a grab weapon. You grab your foe while struck by your attack. The foe you hit becomes grappled as if you had succeeded at an athletics check. As if is way better than saying you push them with the effects of a successful shove, not as if you had done a successful shove. See, this is the verbiage I think the other thing was wanting to do. That would make way more sense. As if you had done a successful shove would make way more sense. This one is as if you get a free thing. Perfect. Perfect reading. I like this one. The other one, I don't like that. It doesn't make sense to me. Predator's Pounce. Animal Instinct. You close the distance, pouncing on them. You can stride up to your speed and make a strike at the end of your movement for 1 action. That's pretty good. This one is a flourish. You can only do it once a round. Thankfully, they finally put a flourish on a 1 ability or 1 action ability. If you are a spiritual person, you can summon a wisp, and it does an attack equal to your proficiency bonus for martial weapons, plus your strength modifier, +2, and it applies the same circumstance as bonuses that you have. On a hit, it deals 4d8 plus your con mod. The damage is your choice of negative or positive. Don't apply your rage damage or your weapon spec damage, but circumstances has bonuses and penalties that would apply. With strike as a critical hit, you become frightened for 1 round. This is just like a really good ranged attack on a barbarian. And look, it's not a thrown weapon, so you didn't lose your defense. This attack uses and counts towards your multiple attack penalty. That's fine with me. This is pretty good. Level 12, you get a 120-foot attack. It's not a flourish, so you can do it more than once. And it counts as a martial weapon, plus your strength mod, plus a +2 item bonus. It's a magical ranged weapon that does 48 plus your con mod on a hit. And if it critical hits, it can frighten them. And it does negative or positive damage, so bypasses a ton of damage reductions. That's a really good ability. I kind of like that. That's a really good ability. Titan Stature. You grow to even greater size. When using giant stature, you can instead become huge, increasing your reach by 10 feet if you're medium or smaller. While you are raging, you have the clumsy 1 condition as long as you are huge. So, small became medium, large became huge. So large, huge, How big is my weapon? It grows with me. I'm using a weapon that is physically 2 sizes larger than me, so it grows with me. How big is this unnecessarily large weapon that I'm now just going to have to start renaming the World Ender? You're level 12. You're level effing 12. How big is this weapon? I love it. Be a giant. Just be the world's smallest giant. Be a gnome. Be a gnome that gets to do the stupid hiding crap. Or a goblin, whichever one had the really good hiding shit. And then just become huge and hide. I'm not even sure you're allowed to with the way the racial reading was. I don't remember what it was right now. But just a concept I find humorous. That you can be the world's greatest hider and then have an unnecessarily large axe to kill people with. Awesome blow. Your attacks are so powerful they can flatten your opponents. When you use knockback, so this improves knockback, which may be the reason for knockback, you can attempt an athletics check against your target's fortitude save. On a critical success, you gain a critical success of a shove, and then a critical success of a trip. Success, you gain the success of a shove, and then a success of a trip. Failure, you just do a regular knockback. So the feat upgrade to a feat that didn't make sense really at all is just a feat that mixes 2 effects together. Why would you not just trip them? If you're tripping them to knock them down so you can just pummel on them. What benefit do you have to push them back and then trip them? Just trip them where they stand. Trip them right there and then beat them right there. Why would you push them back and then have them fall? Who cares? Who cares? They're tripped. You can already pummel on them. I do not understand. Giant's Lunge. Takes an action to pull this one off. You extend your body and prepare to attack foes outside your normal reach. Until your rage ends, all your melee weapons and unarmed attacks gain reach 10. This does not increase the reach of any weapon or unarmed attack that already has a reach trait, but it does combine with abilities that increase your reach due to size, such as Giant's Stature. Small, gigantic, plus 10-foot reach on top of your normally increased reach. How is this not winning people over? If I haven't won you over with the Giant's choice, you need to tell me in detail how I've not won you over. You need to tell me how I've not won you over with this. Fuck was that? I don't know what that was. Vengeful Strike. Come and get me. This is off of Come and Get Me, which by itself is a stupid ability. Creature in your reach succeeds or critically succeeds in attacking against you. Oh, okay. When you are under the effect of Come and Get Me, a creature basically hits you. When struck by an enemy or you can spawn in turn, make a melee strike against a triggering creature. This strike does not count towards your multiple attack penalty. It lets you do a counter attack. You've given up so much. The penalty to Come and Get Me doesn't just apply to melee. Did it? Maybe I read it wrong. Hold on. You are flat-footed and damage rolls against you get a +2 circumstance bonus. None of that says melee. You have made yourself so vulnerable to wizards and ranged attacks. And your upgrade is, as a reaction, I can attack of opportunity someone who hit me. No, this is not a good upgrade. This is not good. Whirlwind Strike takes all 3 actions and it's a flourish. And it has to be the first thing you do in a turn. Whole bunch of things to tell you can only do this by itself. You attack everyone near you. Make a melee strike against each enemy within your melee range. Each attack counts towards your multiple attack penalty, but do not increase your penalty until you have made all of your attacks. Yes. You can do this with the Giant. It's not stuck to any one person. So you just hit everyone without an attack penalty. And it's taken up your entire action, so you don't get to do anything, so that penalty doesn't apply. You win. You just win. That it's fantastic and it's great and it's great and it's fantastic. The only problem is it's in the same thing as Giant's Lunge, which would really sell this to you. So maybe at a higher level you get Whirlwind and Giant's Lunge. Collateral Thrash. Upgrade to Thrash. When you thrash a grab foe, you smack them into someone else nearby. Another foe adjacent to grab foe also takes your thrash damage. That's kind of funny. It's kind of funny. Not much in terms of damage, not that effective, but kind of funny. Dragon Transformation. If you actually did the Dragon Instinct and had the Dragon Rage wings, you transform into a large dragon, gaining the effects of a 6th level dragon form, except to use your own AC and attack modifier. You apply your extra damage from Rage. The action to dismiss this gains a Rage trait. At 18th level, you get a 20-foot status bonus to fly speed, and your damage with Dragon Strike increases to 12. Your breath weapon DC increases to 30. You gain a 14 status bonus to your breath weapon damage. I mean, yeah, if you want to be a dragon, go be dragon. If you were taking Dragon Instinct, you get to now be dragon. This is a good one. This is a good one. It takes longer to do than Giant. Like if I took Giant's Lunge at the same level, I could have grabbed Whirlwind Strike to really sell the Giant for you. But I mean, Dragon Breath. I'm assuming if you're a dragon, you get to then therefore do the Dragon Breath more often. And it is a much higher DC. Normal right now for 16 would be 16 plus what? 2, 4, 6? So 24? Maybe 28? So, or 26? So you've increased your DC by 4 to 6. That's not too bad. But you've also added 14 to your breath weapon damage, which is pretty useful. So, yeah, this is a rage ability. Yeah. I mean, you have to be level 18 to get that full benefit. So no, it was 18 plus 6, 24, maybe 26. So it's only a 4 to 6 bonus. Slightly less than I thought it was on that DC increase, but still, it is something. And you're doing extra on damage and breath weapon damage. That's if you're doing dragon, of course you'd be taking it. Like if that's the instinct you took, that's the instinct you took. You'd be taking it. Reckless Abandon. Your turn begins, and you are half or fewer hit points for a free action. You gain a +2 circumstance bonus to attack rolls, a -2 penalty to AC, a -1 penalty to saves. It lasts until your rage ends or until you're above half hit points, whenever happens first. So your penalty gets slightly bigger. You get an extra 1 bonus. Or no, this is a circumstance bonus. Hold on. Let me make sure this stacks with rage. -1 penalty. Deal 2 additional damage with melee weapons. Doesn't say circumstance, so yeah, I guess I would. All right, then that is slightly decent. Where was it? Dragon, Reckless. You gain +2 circumstance bonus to attack rolls. Also, the other thing I don't think applied to attack rolls. But another penalty to AC. So that would negate the earlier thing. What was it? Transformation, where the AC and the bonus could negate each other. And a -1 penalty to saves. These last until your rage ends or you're above half hit points. Oh, well. It's okay. It's not the greatest, but whatever. Brutal Critical. Your critical hits are particularly devastating. On a critical hit, add 1 extra damage die. This addition to any extra damage die you gain if the weapon is deadly or fatal. The target also takes persistent bleed damage equal to 2 damage die. That's just really good. That's just really, really good. It would work even really more if you were a giant that had Whirlwind Strike and Cleave. These are all good things that should be combined together. Perfect Clarity. As a reaction, when you fail or critically fail an attack roll or will save, you burn out all of your rage to ensure that your attack lands. Reroll the triggering attack roll or will save with a +2 bonus. Use a better result and resolve the effect. Meh? Like the will save, like of those two, I'd say it's better for the will save, but even then, you're ending your rage early at level 18. You're really probably going to be depending upon your rage abilities a lot. Vicious Evisceration. 2 actions. You make a vicious attack to manage your enemy. Make a melee strike. If it hits and deals damage, the target is drained 1 or drained 2 on a critical success. I actually don't remember what drained was. I'll have to come back to that one. Hold on. Why don't I remember drained? Drained as you take a penalty equal to your drain value on con-based checks such as fortitude saves. You lose a number of hit points equal to your level. Oh, it's con damage. Duh. All right, so you do con damage 1. Or sorry, con damage 2 because it affects the modifier. So drain 1 is equal to 2 con damage, the older equivalent of 2 con damage, and drain 2 is equal to the older equivalent of 4 con damage.
Yeah, okay, con damage is always good. I've never not liked con damage. Granted, you're not getting this level 18, so there's probably going to be people that are resistant to drained effects, I would assume. Level 20, Contagious Rage is off of Sheer Rage. You can drive your allies into a frenzy. You can ignore the requirements on Sheer Rage, using it multiple times in a rage. Allies affected by Sheer Rage who accept your anathema for the duration of rage gain your instinct ability and the specialization ability it gains from weapon specialization, but not greater weapon specialization. Now this is a capstone ability. This is fantastic and awesome and great and fantastic. Because not only are you giving your people the ability to rage, they can still do their concentrate effects during it. They get your instinct ability, which in this case was it's the things like getting the elemental things or becoming giant. Or becoming giant. Or becoming giant. As long as they accept your anathema. And they gain the specialization ability, but not the greater weapon specialization. Or becoming a giant. No, for this case, so Contagious Rage would also be useful, like really useful for the spiritual one, because it gives everyone the ability to have positive or negative damage if they so choose. Probably less useful for your cleric or anyone who would naturally do that type of positive or negative damage, but still pretty useful. Or you can turn everyone into giants. Your choice. Not that I'm swinging you one way or the other, but everyone in your team could be large. Quaking Stomp. Once per 10 minutes, you stomp the ground with such force that creates a minor earthquake with the effects of the earthquake spell. So here's the thing. Earthquake spell. I'm going to actually do something slightly different. This would be the end. I'm going to jump to the earthquake spell. I'm going to jump to earthquake. All right, we're at earthquake. So for that earth stomp, you get to do earthquake, which has been severely nerfed from Pathfinder 1e and D&D 3.5. I don't know what its comparison is to Pathfinder 5e. And it's because earthquake used to be OP. People would overlook earthquake. Earthquake was poorly written and was one of the most devastating spells in the game and could end an entire world if you did it right. It was freaking OP. But they have nerfed it. Now it's just moderately powerful. Oh, well. But for level 20 ability, you get the ability to stomp on the ground and cause earthquakes, which for 1 round creates a 60-foot burst within 500 feet of you. And you get to choose the effect you do. You could shake the ground, causing everything to count as difficult terrain for 1 round. And creatures on it take a -2 penalty to everything. Or most everything. Whoop-de-doo. Fissures, they have to do a reflex save at the start of their turn to keep its footing or avoid falling into 40-foot deep fissures that open beneath it. The fissures are permanent and the opponents would need to climb out of it. That's kind of useful. That's actually kind of useful. Structures and ceilings might collapse. The GM rolls a flat check. 14 for average, 9 for shoddy, whatever. All just higher or lower. A collapse deals 11d6 bludgeoning damage. Each creature caught in a collapse must attempt a reflex save to avoid it. If there's buildings, of course, this would be what you would want to choose, though that being said, it's a 60-foot burst. So it's slightly difficult to capture multiple buildings, if that makes sense. The creature takes critical success on this. They take half the collapse damage. Regular success, they take half the collapse damage and fall prone. Failure, they take the full damage and fall prone. Critical failure, take the full collapse damage and fall into a fissure. But there wasn't even a fissure listed for a collapse. That's kind of weird. And falls into a fissure. This didn't mention a fissure, though. How does your critical failure have a different thing than your regular setup? This is collapse, collapse, collapse.
makes sense? Or do all of these happen? I think these all happen. Assuming these all happen, this is amazing. If you only get to choose one, like I initially thought, this is less amazing. This doesn't make sense. But this would only make sense. Critical failure only makes sense if more than one thing happens. But then they don't list anything for fissures for the different saves other than must attempt a reflex save to keep its footing. So there would be no critical successes or anything else. Yeah, I guess they all happen at once. That is slightly more powerful than I thought, but still drastically weak compared to the original types of earthquakes, which, by the way, had shaping, which is why they were unnecessarily powerful and broke as all hell, because Earthquake for Pathfinder was drawn from the Earthquake from 3.5, and the Earthquake from 3.5 was unnecessarily broken, which was Earthquake from Pathfinder had an 80-foot radius spread, parentheses S, so it was shapeable? So you could just make it be and do whatever you want. So you got a lot of effect out of it. And if you made it bigger, you could, so on and so forth. It used to be way the fuck powerful because of that shapeable thing. I think someone pointed that out to him because I don't see anything in here mentioning shapeable or anything. And they reduced the area, which is understandable. And then heightened, you create a massive earthquake that can devastate a settlement. The range increases to half a mile in the area to a quarter mile burst. No, never mind. They just split it into two versions, the heightened and non-heightened version. I guess they were aware of how broken it used to be, and they just made it be a separate level of spell. Makes perfect sense. All right, though. That will bring us to the end of this week's Pathfinder video. Like I said, I am working on getting out the Thea 2 video as well. I didn't get a video out last week because I had a major paper to do, like 10 pages, 12-point font, single spacing, go into this menu to make it even less spacing because single spacing wasn't tight enough. I had to do a bunch of research. That one is on me. So I will get a second video out this week. It just may not be until tomorrow, give or take. I'm trying to get them out. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have learned anything or you found me entertaining, click the thumbs up. And definitely if you learned or found me entertaining, go up above and click that subscribe button. Thank you all so much for watching and learning. I'll catch you guys next time.